Welcome back, yogis. I'm Patsy Springer here with my dear friend, Christine Anderson, and we are going to dive into a chat about the third agreement, don't make assumptions.
But did I?
Did you?
We are so excited to explore this agreement because it happens a lot.
And causes so much turmoil and so much chaos, confusion, and harm.
Yeah, and it's something that can be easily overcome with a little bit more active listening, which we talked about a few lectures or podcasts ago. And it also can be eased over with more questions being asked.
Yeah. I think having better communication and clarity is key for a lot of these, actually, probably all four of these, honestly, but especially don't make assumptions. Don Miguel says that making assumptions can really be a poison. You know, I know firsthand that when I make assumptions and I don't get that clarity, it's not only poison for the person I'm making that assumption about, but for myself, hugely. Right. It really has hindered relationships.
I think it's a blockage. And I'm really curious as, you know, I think it's very primal. We're kind of hardwired to assume things to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
But, you know, in our highly evolved state of where we are at right now as humans in civilization, and, you know, we can say that with a grain of salt, like, are we really highly evolved? There's sometimes where I'm like, oh my gosh. But why are we doing it still?
I think, as you said, to protect ourselves. And as humans, we feel that we have to know. You know, there's something about being validated in our thoughts of, well, I know this, you know, and I also think that making assumptions can so easily cause more gossip.
Because you assume something and you don't actually know the truth. And we as humans are so quick to believe what is put out there. So then we end up sharing that information when we actually don't know if it's true or not.
Right. But we want to be in the know. So even if we're not, you know, we might just assume that we are.
Yeah, I think it's the desire to be right.
Oh, you're exactly right.
Oh, thank you. I knew it.
But don't assume it.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh, I love you.
I love you.
So assumptions are, I think it's just a big blockage for relationships, whether that's friendships, co-working, personal relationships with family members, close ones, loved ones. And we've talked about this before, but when you make an assumption and then you don't express the assumption, also that breeds hostility or resentment or bitterness inside, and then it's this perpetual patterning of making more assumptions. Because then you're trying to make it your own story.
And it just sort of cycles and cycles. And I feel like it's the snowball too.
Yeah.
You know, as you assume more and you assume more.
What's that? Austin?
I've seen it. It looks very fluffy.
But it is like the snowball effect.
Yeah. And it just gets bigger and bigger. And really, you feel that energetically when there are assumptions made on one party or both parties. You feel that in between you two. You know,
the tension.
Yes. And I love that phrase, you know, that everyone's grandma tells you is when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me.
Oh, that's a grandma thing?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh, grandma.
Yeah. But really, it's so true that it small things too. You know, they
bubble up.
Yeah, I love how you said it will cause resentment and maybe jealousy, anger, but definitely tension between these two parties. You know, and something I love, I know we talk about our relationship, you know, with each other and with our other two boss babes. Something I love about what we have as a friendship and coworkers is that we constantly are calling each other out with this. You know, I think it was last week, our dear friend Maddie looked at me and she goes, well, don't make assumptions. It's like
Yeah.
something very small.
But it's from a
But
place of like
oh,
love and compassion.
totally.
Yeah.
And for me, it like puts the brakes on whatever I'm like that
Mm.
snowball that's starting to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, you're right. Like, let me
Yeah.
just take myself out of the situation and look at it for the
Mhm.
facts. What facts do
Yeah.
I have? Let me find some clarity. And also, it helps me to create more communication. As you said, active listening
Be more
and
curious.
also question.
Yeah.
Yes. So when you said this to me, did you mean this? Rather than,
Clarify.
yeah, you said this to me and I don't like that you meant that, you
Yeah.
know?
It's so interesting. Actually, we before our meeting that we have with the four of us, we take a few moments before we
Mm-hmm.
even dive into anything and we meditate.
Mm-hmm.
And today's meditation topic was
Clarity.
clarity.
And then I added in connection.
So here we are. We're connecting over clarity.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, okay, well, how can we stop the snowball effect? It's like, stop, drop, and ask. You don't really need to just drop.
Stop, drop what you're doing and drop that going with your
Yeah.
own story and what you're telling
Yeah.
yourself. Ask.
Ask.
Ask questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it might even be taking a moment to check back in with yourself.
And this is to find the 3 C's: clarity, connection, and communication.
Yes.
Boom.
Yeah. The 3
Mhm.
C's. So, and then when you ask questions, a lot of the times there's resolve,
Mhm.
hopefully.
Mhm.
And maybe it needs to be a few questions to bring a little bit more clarity. Excuse me. But when we do that, the outcome is peace and understanding, right?
Yes.
Clarity.
Yeah.
But when we don't, it's like, okay, if the problem arises of, okay, that's really easy. Okay, I'm making an assumption. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna drop what I'm doing, my attitude or my
Mhm.
opinion. I'm gonna ask a question, but
Mhm.
it's why don't we ask the question? And
Mm.
I'm like thinking about it a lot right now. I'm like, why don't we ask the question? Even if we already know like the pieces to the
Mhm.
puzzle, I think it's
Mhm.
fear based.
Fearful, and also I think that fear is from confrontation.
Yeah. Yes.
We really get as humans, I think it's just the animal side of us to, I don't want to make this person uncomfortable. I
Yes.
don't want to be
Yeah.
uncomfortable. So I'm just going to avoid it
Yep.
altogether and keep with my
Mhm.
assumption and my
Yep.
story, which is that poison.
Yeah. And then
Mhm.
you're in this place of uncertainty and
Mhm.
confusion
Mhm.
and not understanding why they are the way they are, or why you're thinking about that,
Yeah.
or why there's this. You can feel it with
Mhm.
your friends
Oh,
or
big time.
coworkers. You're like, something's off. Like there's something
Yes.
energetically that's not like smooth. And
Mhm.
you're like, there's something where maybe it's one party's
Mhm.
assuming thing or it's both parties. And then that's like this
Yo.
double-edged sword.
Oh, then it's even worse,
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And now I'm trying to
Mhm.
think, I'm like, when's the last time I made an assumption about
Mhm.
someone or something? It's probably
Right.
just earlier today, I'm sure.
Right. I mean, I think it's pretty constant for most of us. And I think when we can get ourselves out of that habit and really go into the facts to find that clarity,
Mhm.
better communication, all of it. And as you said, to find that peace in
Mhm.
that relationship, I really think that you'll feel more healthy in your interactions with other people.
Mhm. Yeah.
I know I do, and I know it
Yes.
takes being a little bit more courageous because there is some confrontation,
Mhm.
but you feel so much better getting the answers rather than just that a story that whatever it is that you're telling yourself that story, that's something that you made up in your mind. And the mind can be a powerful tool in either direction,
Mhm.
positivity or negativity, but it can really bring you down if you continue to listen to that negative story that you
Mhm.
tell
Yep.
yourself. And you're thinking at the time, many of us think this negative story is about this person, negative to them, negative to them. They're such an asshole. They
Mm.
didn't even think about me for this. They didn't even do that. But in reality, all of those, we've talked about before is a mirror that's going
Mhm.
to come back to you. That energy that you're putting out there, that's just you telling you
It's
about
reflecting.
yourself. Like,
Mhm.
how do you really feel about yourself?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think you are so right in terms of looking at ourselves and taking a moment to slow down of
Mm,
what am I actually believing about this person, and
mm,
is that information that I'm choosing to believe, where is that actually based in,
mm-hmm.
and where did I come up with this story about this
Mhm.
person? And then when we do that and you don't ask the questions and you don't take the time to clarify, then you have this, you're walking around with a story
Mm.
about this person, and everything and every moment of you interacting with them or they get brought up in a conversation, you immediately already have a painted picture of who they are and
Yes.
what they're like.
And
Yeah.
walking around with that
Yeah.
story, think of that baggage that you hold. What type of baggage? These are books, heavy, heavy books that you're putting on
Yeah.
yourself that you really don't need.
To carry. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's, who, I mean, like the mind, or in yoga, there's this word called Maya, which
Mm.
means illusion. And so it is basically, a mirage, you could say. Um, the appearance of things isn't always actually as what they truly are, the state of what
Mhm.
they are. And that's why asking questions is so powerful and potent, is because it brings a fuller picture of what is actually happening.
Mhm.
So for example, if you have we'll say a mug, and I'm sitting on one side of a coffee table and you're on the other,
Mhm.
and I'm looking at the mug, and on my side it says like cups half full. It like says it
Mm.
on the cup or whatever,
Mhm.
and then on your side it says
Cups
it's
half
yeah,
empty.
it's like that's the story.
Story. Mhm. But we're
And
looking at the same
same,
mug.
yep, exactly. So that's the same idea with like people or
Mhm.
situations. It's like we are programmed based on our experiences that we've had from birth or even beforehand
Mhm.
until this current time in our lives.
Mhm.
Those experiences shape our perspectives.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's nothing to be like ashamed of that we make assumptions. It's just the matter of fact.
Mhm.
And it's because of our experiences that
Mhm.
shape our perspective. So instead of just being closed minded in this little bubble, taking a moment and being like, oh, what actually do you think about that? Like, what are your
Mm.
opinions? What are your
Mhm.
thoughts? What are your,
What do you see on this
yeah,
mug?
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And I think when we do that, not only does it bring more clarity, but
Mhm.
it also opens our minds and hearts up to more perspective.
Big time. And I think it rewires the patterns of our brain.
Mhm.
Instead of just going with that flow of
Yeah.
believing what you're telling yourself,
Yeah.
you're taking a moment to open up those wirings that we've been telling ourselves
Yeah.
since whatever experience, maybe childhood, as you've
Yes.
been talking about.
Yeah. It's a new
Mhm.
pathway of seeing. And
Yes.
then the more we open ourselves up to that place of vulnerability to ask questions like, hey, can you clarify what you meant?
Mhm.
I'm hearing this from you. Can you rephrase this?
Mm.
I saw you do this. Can you
Mhm.
tell me why? Can you tell me
Right.
more about what you mean by that?
Mhm.
Those are all ways to go deeper.
Mhm.
And I think that because of social media, because of the way we receive news, the way we receive information, the way information is constantly pushed on us, it's
Mhm.
really short and fast. You even think like a post on like Insta stories is what, 15 seconds.
Mhm.
So it's like information is just really like quick, fast, short
Mm.
spurts.
Mhm.
And so it's like, and then we're getting so much of it.
Mhm.
That brings in a lot of room for um I'm blanking on the word, for basically like taking that information in and then formulating your idea, your opinion
Mm.
about it.
And taking it as real, like taking it
Yep.
as
Yep.
truth,
Yep.
whatever's right in front of you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's basically like what we read, what we see
Yeah.
is we're like, oh, that, of course that would be true.
Mhm. It's interesting that you bring up social media with don't make assumptions because I think that social media has put a lot of pressure. I know social
Mhm.
media has put so much pressure
Mhm.
on, all of us that live in this day and age
Mhm.
of what we should or shouldn't be like,
Mm.
you know, because I assume because someone's photo right here shows their perfect life, I
Mhm.
assume that this is how they live and
Mhm.
they must not have any flaws or,
Right. And that goes back to the Maya, the
mm,
illusion, the
mhm,
projection of who we are.
mhm,
So something I like to say in a yoga class, and I'll repeat it just whenever it's a feeling, is when we open into Warrior 2.
Mhm.
Like, you're coming up and you, like, spiral your arms down and open your arms strong in Warrior 2. I'm like, imagine you're, like, cutting past the facade of your
Oh,
ego, that
that's
projection,
yes.
and just bursting past that and being like,
Totally.
"What's there?" And when you're doing that, you're, like, expanding
Your
heart.
heart.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's funny you do that because I think about Kali,
Yeah.
the goddess
Yeah.
Kali.
Yeah.
She has her sword, and that sword is said to be what slices
Yep.
through anything that isn't true.
Yeah.
Slice through that facade of
Yeah.
what we think we are, and whatever's keeping us from really true growth.
Mhm.
I say she slices through the bullshit of the day.
Yeah. And it's, like,
Mhm.
raw and authentic, and it's vulnerable,
Mhm.
and it can be fucking terrifying to be like,
Right.
"I gotta ask you this,"
Yes.
and maybe even saying, being so bold and so open to say, like,
Mhm.
"I'm actually assuming this about the
Right.
situation,
Mhm.
and can you just correct me?"
But
You know?
yeah, and think, whatever the answer is, whether that bring you joy or sadness or anything in between, whatever that answer is, you have clarity.
Yeah.
And what
Yes.
feeling is that? That's like freedom. Like, wow, I don't have to be in
Mhm.
trepidation anymore,
Mhm.
fearful, and like
Yeah.
just continuing to
Confused.
confused. Lots of
Ooh.
C words.
Yeah. Christine.
Courage. Right.
Yeah, and I think that's what we actually crave. I didn't mean to do another C word, it just came out. But I really think that's what we crave is just honesty and
Mhm.
to be in the know and not to be um, left behind.
Mhm.
Because that does not feel good. And I know
Yeah.
I've been there. I'm sure you've been there. We've
Mhm.
all been there. And it feels like being forgotten or
Mhm.
just that no one's taking the time to actually
Mm.
be considerate of what we're going through.
Yeah, you're right. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. And it's a stressful time,
Yeah.
you know, to
Yeah,
to
it's
to
awful.
be so confused
Yeah.
and to not have the courage to
Mhm.
ask questions, to find that clarity.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you, so we've been talking about when we are assuming things personally, how do you deal with a
Mm.
conversation where you're feeling that someone else is assuming
Mm.
something? How do you get
Mhm.
them to dig a little bit deeper there?
Yeah. Yeah, it felt the energy is definitely felt when you're
Mhm.
like saying something or doing something and you're like, you're like, I can feel your judgment or.
Was that an opinion?
Yeah. I like this whole year I've just really stepped out into my own power of
Mhm.
being more bold and blunt and trying to be soft with my bluntness, but
Mhm.
just get those words out.
Trying to be soft with your bluntness, but not shying away from the truth.
Yep, exactly.
Mhm.
And so, especially in those moments, like if you feel it, like take a moment. We talked about those three gates. Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? Coming back to that, but at the same time, like the longer I let that pass, that tension or that like weird shifty energy, then there's in those moments there's more room for that growth to happen
Mhm.
of that negative growth or that tension of growth. So just ask.
Mhm.
Like, "Hey, I just want to clarify. Did you hear this and this and this from what I just said?" Or, you know, I can you repeat back to me how you received that? And things like
Mhm.
that to get the dialogue to expand deeper than just the
Mhm.
surface level.
Yeah. And I see also with making assumptions that it's easy to extract
Mhm. Extract?
mm, what is it called?
Ex
When you make it too big and, like, you make things up from an actual story? Extravagant? Wait,
I don't know what you're
what
trying
is
to
the
say.
word? It's, like, on the tip of my tongue.
Extrapolate?
We could go with that. Extravag No. It'll come to me,
It's
like,
okay.
tonight when I'm
You're expanding
sleeping.
upon an idea.
Yeah, but it's not totally a fault. It's not totally true. Like, you have this one situation that happened, and then you actually make it into something a lot
A bigger story.
bigger. Yeah.
Okay,
And I
yeah.
feel like that is assuming as well. You got that one
Yeah.
thing and then you just ran with it.
Mhm. Yeah, and then you live your life based off of it or your opinions on that person based off of that.
Mhm.
And at the same time, like we were talking about, it's easy to make assumptions. Like you see someone, you're like, what are they doing? Or whatever it is, and then we hold on to it.
Mhm.
And that's the poison that you're talking about. But then how does that play out into other relationships? Like, say you make assumptions
Mm.
about a coworker or something,
Mhm.
and then you go home and then you share that assumption you
Mhm.
had about your coworker to your loved one.
Yeah.
And then you're letting them have that poison. You
Yes.
know,
And also when your loved one meets them at the holiday party or
then
whatever, they're not gonna be able to really bond or connect with that person because 'cause they're gonna have that assumption as
yep,
well.
yeah. And so,
Mhm.
giving people the benefit of the doubt of when you meet them for the first time, it's so challenging when you meet someone for the first time. We formulate an idea and opinion about that person within like the
Mhm.
first 60 seconds.
Right, right.
And so how can we be people to that are open to
Mhm.
receive someone as they are without the
Mm.
need to
Judge
or
them.
put them in a box. Like
Mm.
this is who they are and this is what they're about,
Right.
and that's how I'm going to see them so I can understand
Yeah.
them. But
Right.
we're not we're so much more complicated than that
Yeah. And people change constantly every day.
all the time.
Mhm.
I mean, who I was a year ago till today,
Yes.
vastly different.
Right, which is the beauty of life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so when we do that, when we put someone in a box, then we're also limiting our own sense of
Mhm.
self because we're trying to keep people from growing in our own minds.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think when you meet someone for the first time, remembering the attitude that this is just right now.
Mm.
Let's see what happens the next time I meet them.
Yeah.
Let's see how we meet each other, who I
Mhm.
am when I see you next
Mhm.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. For example, like tonight, I'm seeing someone who I was very close with and I haven't seen or spent time with in a really long time. And I could be really honest and say that I assume that they're in a particular point in which they're struggling or going through something hard in their life or that they don't have their stuff together. But that's a total assumption. I have
Mm.
no idea.
Mhm.
And to there we go again about the raw authentic being open of just being curious to ask
Mm.
it and overcoming this sense of does this how does this come off? I
Mhm.
think we're so inclined to people please as well,
Mm.
and in that then we're just like I have this idea of like when we make assumptions about one another, it's both sides, right?
Right.
I could be assuming something about you.
And I could be assuming something
Right,
about
and it
you.
could be not
Mhm.
even said.
Yeah, and, like, nothing could be true of either of
Right,
those.
right. So
Mhm.
then what is it Patsy and I actually connecting and dialoguing,
Mm.
or is it Patsy's projection
Mm.
and my projection talking to each other?
Because we just want people please. Mm. Oh, that's cool.
And there's no that heart to heart.
Right, right. True, raw,
Mhm.
vulnerable, real,
Yeah.
clear
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times we're communicating from a place of intellect, which is important
Right, right.
and essential
Mhm.
for growth and development.
And especially when we are talking to people who might be assuming quite often, use your
Yeah.
intellect to see,
Yeah.
filter that.
Yeah. But I think we're in this day and time of it's like intellect that's
Too much.
too much.
Mhm.
And where we aren't communicating via the heart.
Mhm. Show me who you are.
Yeah.
I wanna see your
Yeah.
realness.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like I want to see you.
Yeah, be bold, be
Yeah.
unapologetically you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it takes some humility too because
Mhm.
when there is that open communication of say you're assuming something about me
Mhm.
and then you even open up and you tell me, "Hey, I'm thinking this about you right now." That also requires me to be humble and open as
Mm.
well. So it's not just one-sided
Mhm.
party situation here. It
Yeah,
takes two to really dive into authentic
and
communication.
to grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. It's and I like that you said it it really takes the person who's receiving this to
Mm.
truly receive it with an open heart. Like,
Yes.
wow, I'm being perceived that
Yeah.
way. That's interesting.
Right.
I perceive myself this way.
Yeah.
So maybe it's in my language. Maybe it's my body language
Yeah.
that day. Maybe my
Yeah.
text could use more emojis.
More love. Yeah, and I think we walk around with these assumptions about each other, and then we don't even really know who one another is.
Mm-hmm.
We have these ideas about each other, and I'm like, that's to me, it's so sad that we do this. Like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
I just think about people in my life or coworkers that I have, and we all have stories not only for ourselves but for one another. This is
Mm.
this person. They do this. This is their
I
life. This is
know.
their job. This is how they
Yeah,
are.
and what I think about too is that I have bad days where I'm short with people,
Yeah. Right.
where
We
I
all
say,
do.
it's just, and I try to think, I hope they give me the pass, the benefit of the doubt that she's having a bad day, the forgiveness, the patience with me. And it makes me think about I need to remember to always do that as well.
Yeah.
If I want that for myself, I need
Yeah.
to be sure,
Yeah.
that I am giving that out as well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I think that is actually another beautiful way to surpass or overcome making
Hmm.
assumptions is just to be a little bit more to have the time to do your own personal work,
Hmm.
look inside, and what do you even assume about your own self
Mm.
that's may or may not be true. And sometimes
Mhm.
assumptions are true. It doesn't mean that they're always
Yeah.
untrue,
Mhm.
right? But they might be clouded or jaded,
Mhm.
and the way we see ourselves also might be jaded and not
Mhm.
fully in the light. And
Mhm.
so when we take the time for ourselves to step in the light and say, "Hey, what's going on with me? Like, where are my
Mhm.
like character flaws where I can grow?"
Yeah.
So that when you're doing that constant work, when you're going
Mhm.
on to the mat, when you're doing your meditation
Mhm.
practice, you becoming more self-aware so that hopefully you know how complicated you yourself are.
Mhm.
So the people that you're dialoguing with, you also know that they have their own work,
There
their own complicated life.
Yes. Yes. It's not just black and white with
Yeah.
us. We have so many details
Yeah.
and the word that you use, facets of our
Yeah.
personalities.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
like what you were talking about too, each day is so different.
Mhm.
So it can be very dangerous to just put someone in a box and think that that's how they're going to be for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, and dangerous for yourself. Like, I know we've discussed this before, but putting yourself in the box of I am a yogi and
Mm,
I don't have, I'm not allowing myself to have over pleasures, or like whatever it is. And I will always be this way and
mm,
I should live in a cave, that sort of thing. And then so you go out and you have a glass of wine and you feel like shit because you feel so
mm,
guilty about it,
mm.
because you're in that box.
Do you?
No.
Okay. I was just asking a question.
But right, thank you for that clarity.
Yeah.
But I guess I've been there
Yeah.
before where I felt guilty for indulging because I'm a yoga teacher.
Mhm.
I felt that
Mhm.
I shouldn't be privileged
Mm.
to those pleasures.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't think like that.
I definitely have gotten over that.
No, but definitely that makes sense, and I also think, okay, let's pick that a little bit more, like,
Mm.
your upbringing was in the
Oh
Catholic Church,
yeah.
and
Hmm.
as was mine, and so,
Hmm.
okay, now you're not only we're not just talking to you right now in this life,
Yeah.
everything plays into who you are. Even if you don't
Yes.
you're not fully aware and consciously connected
Hmm.
to your own patterning, that's
Right.
still present somehow,
Yeah.
somewhere in your being, whether you've done the work or
Mhm.
not.
Totally. And it's also the flip side of this. Like maybe you're hearing us say doing the work and you're thinking, well, I am not a yogi. I've never been to yoga class before. And actually, I love my glass of wine and whatever it is, but don't put yourself in that box.
Mhm.
Like, I think that you are really stopping yourself from growth when we say,
Mm.
because I'm this way, I don't do that.
Mhm.
Why can't you have both?
Yes, yeah. And
Hmm.
there it's more of an imbalanced situation. And I come back to the question, are you, not just you, but are you, those who are listening, are you harder on yourself or are you harder on other people?
Mm.
And that answer to that question can change, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Sometimes I'm hard on myself.
Mhm.
Actually, recently I've not been hard on myself, and I really
Mhm.
haven't been hard on other people
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now, but
Mhm.
there have been times where I was really hard on myself. Like, I was
Mhm.
so dogmatic with my yoga practice and my diet,
Mhm.
and I'm very, very specific with, like, my modes of movement and the way I eat,
Mhm.
but that was really stripping me of joy
Mhm.
and also, um, formulating for other people, assuming,
Yeah,
strong
yes.
opinions about me and, like, how I live my life,
Oh, wow. Wow, that's
you
interesting.
know?
Mhm.
And so everything that we do and everything that we think and every action that we take has precedence, has a residue,
Mhm.
right? And so it's like this ripple effect. And how can we calm those waves? So, because if it's like the domino effect,
Mm.
like I take an action or I say something to you or I assume something to you, whether it's spoken or unspoken,
Mhm.
there's a domino effect.
Absolutely.
And that plays onto you. And then
Mhm.
maybe
Keeps
you,
going on.
yep,
Mhm. I'll say it to, next person I
yeah.
see. So would you say a good place, another tip of to not make assumptions would be to give yourself a break, give others people a break and have that loving kindness, project from the heart
Mhm.
space opposed to this place of like harshity, and
Yeah.
like, almost
Intense.
yeah, intensity.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so how do we cultivate loving kindness? How do we do that?
I,
Or
the
what do you do?
yeah, what do I do?
Yeah.
The golden rule for me is like, like the golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated. And then sometimes I actually have to ask myself, how do I want to treat myself this way? Like how do I want to treat myself for this situation?
Mm.
And many times it's like cutting myself a break
Yeah.
or like, mothering myself. Like,
Mm.
Patsy, like go give yourself a walk or
Mhm.
something. Like it's like treating myself to something that's really good for myself
Yeah.
and then remembering to do that for others.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually you just
Yeah.
made me think. You said treat others how you want to be treated. So I was recently in Venice Beach leading this Black Swan Yoga and on it
Mhm.
retreat, which was amazing, and the community and connection and vulnerability.
Mm.
It was beautiful. Um, but we did that. We took this time to explore this personality quiz called the True Colors,
Mhm.
and it's just a little quiz that you do, and like you rank yourself of how well you relate to different situations or things like this. And then you find your results. You get a little bit of information about who you are and the way you are. But the beauty of the quiz is to become also aware of, whoa, I'm generally like this, and you have a completely different color in the way you receive and the way
Mm.
you react and the way you experience and the way you work
Mhm.
and the way you want to be communicated to. So we created and thought about this idea of treating others how not you want to be treated, but treating others how they want to be treated. And
Mm.
so the way you like
Ah.
to feel, for example, we could even go into like the love languages.
Mhm.
The way you want to feel loved isn't maybe the same way that your partner feels
Right.
loved,
Absolutely.
right? Like my
Mhm.
girlfriend told me the other day that someone she's seeing is like super lovey-dovey and like
Mhm.
super touchy, and I'm like, I want that. Like, please. Um and she was like, "Oh, that was just like too much for me." And
Mm.
we opened this conversation up to saying, well, he's in his mind, he's assuming that's the way
That she
she
wants
wants
to
to
be
be
loved.
loved, right?
Mhm.
And there's an
Mhm.
assumption, not even through words, but through action.
Mm.
And
That's
I
such a good reminder.
I know. And so I was like,
Mhm.
well, you can go into that romantic relationship and say, you know, and be honest
Yeah.
and raw rather than every time he's caressing you
Right.
or squeezing
I
you,
know.
then you're what? You're building
It's
resentment. And then
right.
that's what's that? It's building this like this hardened heart, this calloused heart
Mhm.
of like, I
And it's
don't
gonna
like it.
break.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. It becomes more and more fragile.
Yes.
So being curious as to especially like the people you spend most of your time with,
Mhm.
close friends, coworkers, loved ones. Obviously,
Mhm.
it's really hard to do with like everyone, but
Mhm.
just to see how they work.
That is such a really beautiful thing to bring up. Getting to know them so that you aren't assuming that this is the right way to
Mhm.
communicate.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just thinking of, like, a way to communicate with Christine.
Uh,
I feel like she's so happy when I take a fitness class with her. That's, like, a way to really connect, you know?
I thought about you this morning. Where are my girls? Why am I here solo?
She's so happy when, like, her girls, her community is with her to work out, and I feel like that's one of your, like, that's
Yeah.
one of your love
Quality time.
languages. Yes. And
And
then
physical touch, if you're
right.
curious.
Oh.
And basically it all. But you're right.
Yeah.
And just, being
Mhm.
aware of like
Totally,
everyone's communication style is
and
different.
which might be very different than one of my friends, like, when they work out, they want to be alone. Like, if
Mm.
I tried to work out with them, they would be like, "What are you doing with me?"
Yeah, like why are you here?
Like,
Yeah.
it's so different.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's an assumption to be
Mhm.
like, "Well, Christine really likes it, so I'm
So
gonna go do it with this
yeah,
person too."
exactly.
Then they're
That's where it gets pretty hard is because it
Mhm.
is so different person to person.
Mhm.
So, be bold with yourself and ask
Yeah.
questions. And if that's terrifying, start asking yourself questions.
Mhm.
And we've talked about this so many times, but take time to journal and to meditate
Yes.
about it. Today, I just journaled and just
Mhm.
a page of like, hey, what's going on in my life? Like, where am I at? And just being curious about your own interpersonal work
Mhm.
because life goes so fast. I, it's already May and
Mhm.
we're almost halfway through the year. And I just
Holy
think
cow.
about everything that's happened in just
Mhm.
a short little time. It's so important to slow down because
Yes.
we are in a society that is so fast
Mhm.
paced. Our nervous systems are hardwired to be in fight or flight in the sympathetic state from the moment we wake up to the moment we
Mhm.
crash at night.
Yeah.
And so give yourself some grace. It's human, it's primal
Mhm.
to make assumptions, but can you train your body and your mind to slow down, to take a moment to receive the information so that you can
Mhm.
actually ask a question?
Yes.
Because it will, like what we were talking about,
Mhm.
resolve so much uncertainty
Mhm.
and has the potential of clarity, obviously, but even healing relationships.
Big time. Absolutely. And knowing that, as we said, we change. And so, two-way street because we made that assumption before. Let's have the clarity. Let's wipe the slate. Tomorrow's a new day. I'm a new person, but they're new people too. Like, open your heart to this change, this transformation that really can take place. And, just to wrap it up, I think giving a couple more tips of what we
Yeah.
said, ask questions
Hmm.
for the other person and yourself
Hmm.
to find that clarity,
Right.
not putting yourself in a box
Yeah.
or someone else in a box,
Yeah.
being open to that
Growth.
change, that
Yeah.
growth. And I love that Christine said, journal,
Hmm.
slow down and
Hmm.
journal. You might not even realize that you're making an assumption about yourself or someone else, something going on until you start writing it out.
Hmm.
And then when you write it out and you realize it's an assumption, something that I encourage you to do if you're having some trepidation, some fear around the communication,
Mhm.
just go ahead and write out a few questions that you would like to ask
Mm.
someone else or yourself.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and another thing that I'm thinking about real quick before we close out is I get a lot of people who come up to me and they'll tell me about a conversation that they had with someone that's
Mhm.
happened maybe like a week or two ago,
Mm.
and they're still ruminating about it.
Mm.
And in my mind, the way I've gone through life has really taught me and led me to just like ask, like, what's up,
Mhm.
And when I hear people sharing those stories of rumination, I'm like, oh my gosh, they've been living in this angst and uncertainty for
Mhm.
weeks, or
Mhm.
even if it's just a few days. And they're like, what do I do? And I'm like, well, one, you can either just let it go if it's like, that there's no fruit to that,
Mhm.
or go back and just
Clarify.
clarify it.
Mhm.
Because even if it's not the answer you want to receive, that's the assumption right there.
Yeah.
You're gonna get clarity, and you're
Mhm.
gonna find more resolve from it.
Mhm.
And the last thing I'm thinking about, okay, how do I create loving kindness? Like,
Mhm.
where am I getting that from? I think it's twofold. One is you are an important individual, and just I know we all have so many responsibilities that come up in life, but you are important and you're unique. So make a meeting with yourself,
Mm.
whether that's going for a run or taking a meditation class or yoga class or practicing Black Swan Yoga TV
Mhm.
or getting a workout in, whatever that is.
Getting your nails done.
Yeah,
Treat yourself, you
taking a
know?
bath.
Don't be afraid to spend the extra dollars to
Yeah.
do something good for yourself.
Yes.
Mhm.
Because I think when we are more at peace with ourselves and more in our own life experience, then we are going to be less likely to project and assume about others. Because now that I'm thinking about it even more, if we're in that space of constantly assuming things about others, what does that say about
Mm.
how we perceive our own individual self?
Mhm.
It's probably pretty low.
Mhm.
And to fight and to counteract that is by being nurturing and compassionate to yourself.
Yes. It's almost like you begin to just grasp.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel solid with
Yeah. Yeah.
myself, so I'm trying to grab at something that will make me feel better. And a
Yeah.
lot of
Or
times
to
that might
even
be
like take the tension off of me in my own situation and be like,
Yes.
oh, like, and that's why people, I think, gossip is the
Mhm.
same thing as it's like filling a void. And
Mhm.
that's what it is. And,
Mhm.
you know, um, being with yourself is important. It can be scary, but again, it's so essential for growth and development, not only for you, but for the benefit of everyone.
Mhm.
And that's the parallel to yoga is when you
Mhm.
practice yoga, when you get on your mat and you're breathing and you're moving and you're focusing and you're meditating, it's more than just a benefit to you.
Mhm.
You leave feeling yoga stones. You feel bliss and you feel lighter and more relieved.
And you
And
wanna
you're going to,
share
yeah,
that.
whether you
Uh-huh.
communicate it or you're just walking through the street
Definitely.
and you own it. Um, I had an acting coach in college, and she was one of those people who really left a deep impression on me. And we did a lot of different um, acting, like warm up activities. And she would just have us walk around the space.
Mm.
And she would say, I can feel your individual energy just by watching you walk around.
Mm.
And it made me really aware of how not only I obviously sit, posture is important, but how I carry myself through life.
Mhm.
Right. And someone who has self respect and self love
Yeah.
to themselves is going to carry themselves differently than someone who feels at a loss in self hatred.
Mhm.
Right. And that person who probably feels that self hatred, if they're not even communicating it, they're in that mind, that's headspace of like, oh, that person's like that, and da da da.
Mhm.
Rather, if someone's in love, we're not looking for external validation
Yeah.
as much, hopefully.
Right, right.
So you carry yourself with a little bit more respect, and when you do that and you feel good about yourself, hopefully that's like, I want Patsy to feel good about herself. So
Right.
why would I assume?
Mhm.
Rather, I want to like uplift and use that
Yes.
energy that we all have
To
to
help.
inspire. Yeah, and help. Yeah.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
The work always begins with yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to end.
We love you guys. Truly, we really do love you. Thank you for tuning in. Again, I'm Patsy Springer. This is my dear, dear, sweet friend, Christine Anderson. We're honored. We're grateful. We are so joyous to be able to communicate with you this way. Namaste.
Namaste.